My tool of choice for writing my books is Scrivener. I don't really use it to plot my books. You'll see in a subsequent video that I use something called the Novel Factory as my preferred tool for plotting my books. But for writing my books, I prefer to use Scrivener. Now, you'll hear a lot of talk about Scrivener. Most independent authors use Scrivener. I think it's fair to say that. And if you listen to any of the podcasts, if you listen to any of the people who've been doing this for any length of time, they all, or the majority, tend to migrate to Scrivener. Most start in Microsoft Word. They hate it. They find all the problems with it, and then they migrate to Scrivener. And having gone through the pain barrier of learning Scrivener, because there is a little pain barrier to learning Scrivener, I'll give you a solution to that before the end of this video though. Once you've gone through that pain barrier of learning Scrivener, I don't think there's any turning back. It is a wonderful tool. I'm going to show you my Scrivener accounts now, and I'll show you a work in progress and a completed work to show you just why I love it so much. This is my Scrivener account, and I've just written a full trilogy on Scrivener. And you could get a feel for how useful this is. And in actual fact, every time I use Scrivener, I refine my process. So when I've shown you this book, I'm going to show you how I'm refining my process with Scrivener to just make life even easier for myself. Because the more I use it, the more I learn, the more I actually get better at working with it. So this is Don't Tell Meg, which is a 90,000 word thriller. And you'll see here that I've got every version of this book here. So I've written draft 1. I go through draft 1, I change it, I make it as good as I can. I then send it to my proofreaders. This is the version that I sent to my proofreader. This is my refined version. This is as good as I can get it. Then when it comes back from my editor proofreader Helen, it comes back, I import it with Helen's changes. I work through Helen's changes, accept them or reject them, and then make further changes of my own. And then we get to my final read, which is when I read it as a reader. So having made all those changes and poured all over it and done everything that Helen suggested, I read it as a reader and make further changes. And then we finally get to the final version, which is the version that I'm then going to publish. That's going to go and be exported and put into draft to digital and whatever format that I use. So it's quite a long process, but the great thing about Scrivener is that I keep all of my files together in one place. So this is a Don't Tell Meg Scrivener file, and it has all the versions of the book within it, and there will be subsequent versions, no doubt. I might come back and rewrite. If somebody spotted an error that I'd made, that I'd missed going through all those versions, then I might go back and change it. Or I might go into the front matter and the back matter, maybe change some links or something like that. But I can go in at any stage and create new versions of it. So we can close and open up those. If I open up that, we can go into the front matter there, into chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. We can skip through the chapters just like that. The other thing that a lot of people love about Scrivener is these corkboards, this corkboard here. That it allows you, many people will be familiar with the idea of putting index cards up on a wall to put your plotting ideas up so that you can move them around. And many people use Scrivener for these index cards. So they might put their plot points, the key parts of their story on these cards before they even start to write. And then the great thing about it is you can just drag and drop these cards and move them around and change the order. And it's a very nice way of structuring and playing around with the ordering of the episodes within your book. Now, although you'll see in the next iteration of Scrivener, what I'm doing now when I'm writing my books, you'll see that I've slightly changed my practice. I actually prefer to use the Novel Factory for this and look at the video and make your choice. Decide which one suits the way that you think and the way that you plan. But I tend to use the Novel Factory for this. But in the next iteration of Scrivener, I have actually started to use these index cards slightly more. Now, I tend, when you write books, you tend to have plotters and pantsers. Plotters are the people who meticulously work out everything in their story. Pantsers are people who tend to figure it out as they go along. And I'm in between that. I like to have quite a loose plot. I really don't like to have all the details plotted. And I make a lot of it up as I go along, which is probably why this index card system doesn't work so brilliantly for me. But a lot of authors love this index card system. The other thing that you can do in here is you can create things like title pages, and you can create copyright pages, and you can import your cover as well. That's a demo cover, that's not the final cover, but it allows me, when I'm sharing versions of the book, as I do with my proofreader editor Helen, it means I can put a cover on it and it just makes it look a little bit nicer. Now, the other thing that I absolutely love for time management when I'm using this tool, and I use this every day when I'm writing, is the project targets. I really love this as a time management tool, and I say use it every day. So you can say how long your book is going to be, and you can create individual session targets. Now, when I write, this is my style, this is my practice, I write 5,000 words a day when I write in very compressed sessions. And so I can set my session target. Now, yours might not be 5,000. Please don't think that you've got to write 5,000 words a day. If you write 200 words a day, 500 words a day, 1,000 words a day, whatever suits your particular domestic schedule. For me, it's 5,000. I write off days to write, and it's 5,000 words, and I sit there until those words are done. But that's just what suits me. The other thing is I have a rough idea of how long I want the novel to be. And as I type in, what you'll see with Scrivener is that it will actually count the words as we go along, and so I know at any stage how I'm doing and whether I've hit my word target. I really love that tool in Scrivener. I find it a really good motivational tool. The other thing you'll see is that I colour code the versions just for ease of reference. And when you've written your book into Scrivener, you can do what's called a compile. Now, I'm not going to teach you Scrivener because you do need to learn Scrivener. It will take some time to learn how to do this. But you can compile your book from Scrivener. Usually I compile it for Helen, my proofreader editor, as a doc or a docx file so that she can read it. But you'll see there are all sorts of file types here, and that you can actually export from Scrivener straight into a Mobi file or an EPUB file. And those are the two main web file types that you're going to need to list on Amazon Kindle or to list on Nook or Draft the Digital or Smashwords, wherever you're going to list your book. So this is why authors love this tool. They can write directly into Scrivener, and they can export as EPUBs, Mobis, or doc files. And those are the most common file types that you're going to use as an author. This is why it's so popular. Now, again, in a later video, Vellum has really outpaced Scrivener in that although Scrivener is a brilliant writing and plotting tool, Vellum now really has overtaken Scrivener in terms of how easy it is to format. So now I would write my books in Scrivener. I certainly wouldn't do it in anything else because I love Scrivener for writing. I would export it as a doc file to send it to my proofreader editor Helen. And I would export it as a doc file, a finished doc file, then to bring into Vellum, which you'll see in a later video, to then format it for all of the file types that I need to use and all of the aggregation services where I could list my book. That's how I'm working now. So things never stay the same. Already watching this video, you'll know that I've used Drive, I've used Word, I've used Scrivener, I use all sorts of tools. And the scene changes. Vellum wasn't around when I started writing. Now I've used Vellum. There's no going back. I love Vellum for formatting my ebooks. So that's the way I like to do it. But again, if you can't afford Vellum within your budget, if it's got to wait, the great thing about Scrivener is you can export as a doc file, as a Mobi, and as an EPUB. And you can use Scrivener quite happily in the meantime if your budget doesn't stretch to Vellum just yet. So I'm a big fan of Scrivener. The one thing that I would say to you is when you save your Scrivener files, so when you're deciding where you're going to actually save it to, this save as area, make sure that you save it to a OneDrive or a Dropbox area so that the minute you save your Scrivener files, they're getting backed up. So I have a Dropbox folder. Everything that goes into that Dropbox folder gets automatically backed up to Dropbox. And you'll see that my Scrivener files are all backed up there. All the books that I've ever written, everything I've done is backed up there. Now, the other thing that I want to show you in Scrivener, and this is how I'm refining my process. So the thing about writing, if you're serious about it and you keep doing it, is that you should always be refining your process. I'm always finding ways of making things better. I'm always learning new tricks. So I've immersed myself in a book called Save the Cat, which is actually a screenwriter's book. But in Save the Cat, the author of that book, who is Blake Schneider, Blake outlines a great system called beat sheets. And beat sheets basically talk about the key beats, the key components that every story has if you're going to get your story structure right. So having read that and immersed myself in it and I loved it, what I am now doing is I'm now creating new books at 50,000 words, 75,000 words or 90,000 words around the beat sheet structure. So I've created Scrivener templates. If I open up this template here, let me just go and open up that template. We'll go for a 50,000 worder actually. And let's open up that beat sheet template. What I've now done is I've created ready-made templates because I'm fed up with creating all the chapters and things like that and doing all the formatting. I've just created templates now. So if I were to write a new book, I would save that as whatever my new book is, my new book. I'd save that template as a new book, and then all the key components are there automatically for me. Now, you'll see that I'm also using this corkboard, and I'm using the corkboard to put in Blank-Schneider's key points. So as you go through the book, I've timed it and worked out how many words I need to be at for each part of the book. And I've used the corkboard for that. So because I'm a mix between a plotter and a pantser, I'm using Blank-Schneider's key points to make sure I hit all the right beats of the book, but I'm not intricately plotting every part of the story. The other thing that I've done is I've brought in a sort of standard format for copyright and things like that, and I've put the cover in there. That's the book I'm working on at the moment, but in actual fact I could just bring my covers in and replace that cover. I've also put an area for continuity notes. This is something that I found as I need to go on. I need to make notes about the story, so I've got a continuity notes page there. And I've also imported some documents, 17 tips for writing, how to write a book blurb, things that I use time and time again, story checks here. These are the things that you need to include in your story, the key components of any great story. Again, these are from Blank-Schneider. So these are all the things that I'm going to go through when I am then revising the first draft of my novel. And I've put those into a template just because it makes life easier for me. I don't have to write the same stuff time and time again. If I close that down, and let me close Don't Tell Meg down, you see that it's creating a backup and saving that all the time, and that's then going into Dropbox, so I'm not going to lose my version of that. And let me just show you the book that I'm working on at the moment. So this is a 50,000 word novel. I opened up that template to bring in all of the beat sheet points here, so that when I'm working through this novel, I can make sure that I'm getting everything right. Now you'll see that I've written up to as far as chapter 4, so I'm 20,000 words into this book at the time of recording this video. So when you go into chapter 5, you'll see that I haven't actually written anything yet. And the way that I'm writing now is that I write scene notes. I'm moving more towards planning, but I don't plan everything. But before I write scene notes for each section, so I do know where the story is going on the day that I write. I also know where the key arc of the story is going. I plot that in the Novel Factory, which you'll see in a future video. But before I start writing, I'm going to write in about 5 days' time. The night before, I put very detailed notes here so that when I hit the ground running, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly where the story's going. All I've got to do is type my 5,000 words. And I'm finding Scrivener, great for that. But also in here, we've got the front matter. We've got the book. We've got all the notes here that I'm going to have to check. And once that book's written, remember it's only a first draft, I will then start to work through all of these things, all of these points that help me to remember what I'm supposed to be doing to make sure that book is as good as it can be before I then go File, Compile, and export it as a doc to send to Helen, who is my proofreader and editor. And that's how I'm using Scrivener to write. Now that is a fluid process. Every time I write a book, I make it better. But this is why I love Scrivener. And that file is going to be backed up forevermore. It's in Dropbox. I could put all versions of my book in there. If I come back to it in 10 years' time and rewrite it, I could just open my Scrivener file and then do the 10-year anniversary rewrite of Dead of Night. It's all safe in Scrivener. Everything is recorded there. Now, I haven't even begun to show you the power of Scrivener. I've just given you a taster of it and shown you how I use it. There is one more tip that I want to give you if you are going to embrace Scrivener. If you are going to use Scrivener, then you're probably better getting a training program to learn how to use it really fast. Now, they do give training resources within the software, but frankly, you want to use something like this. This is Learn Scrivener Fast by Joseph Michaels. When I started using Scrivener, I just bought this and I worked my way through it in about a day. It took me about a day to work my way through it. I got the hang of it very, very quickly because Joseph just shows you what you need to know. Now, unfortunately, it is an additional cost, and your budget might not stretch to that. If your budget doesn't stretch to it, also on my bookshelf to my right here, I've got the For Dummies version of Scrivener, which you could also use. And remember, you've always got the Scrivener guide that they give you too. There are also videos online about how to use Scrivener, but if you just want it all in one place and you just want to get to it really, really quickly, Learn Scrivener Fast by Joseph Michaels is frankly the best place to go. You can work through Joseph's videos in a day. I just set aside a day and a half for it, and before I knew it, I knew all the key things about using Scrivener, and I was off with the software. Again, you'll hear many podcast hosts, people who've been self-publishing for years, they'll all tell you that Learn Scrivener Fast is the place to go. Unfortunately, it is an extra expense. That's the downside of it. But if you're really serious about your author career and you want to know how to do this, this is the place, the number one destination to go to learn about Scrivener and get using it efficiently, effectively, and using all of its beautiful hidden tools really fast.